Hello, all you hardcores out there, how you doing? It's Russ here from Poker's Corner, biggest gob in sport. All right, mate, how you doing?
I'm all right, buddy. Like your thumbnail. It's good.
Yeah, I thought I'd put Maxi Hughes up out of respect for him and Johnny Vegas, his trainer. So,
Yeah. Take some getting your head round last night, won't it?
well, I mean, I think we should talk about this first, actually, out of respect, shouldn't we, really? Uh, I don't, what is the answer? I mean, where's it end?
Listen, this is boxing, and there was few signs really what were leading up to that decision. I mean, effectively, it's yeah, all right. You could say it's neutral. You've got an American, you've got an Australian fighter, a British fighter on US soil, but ultimately, Cambosos was effectively the promoter's fighter. We've got three US judges who it looks like knew the script, what was going on. But there was just a couple of signs for me, even during the fight, that I wasn't going to get that decision. There was, I mean, look, Maxi Hughes won the fight. There was little doubt about that. I thought he won conservatively. I gave him 8 of the 12 rounds.
8 out of 12, yeah.
8 out of 12.
I gave it by that, and then I kept swaying to 3 because it does that to your head, doesn't it? You think, oh, what am I
Yeah.
looking at? But I thought, I just said to Ozzy Smith 4 rounds, and let me just play you this what Ozzy Smith sent me because he's in Portugal. But
Yeah.
listen to this now. Hang on, 2 seconds, turn it on.
To be honest, mate, where do I start? Maxi Hughes was absolutely robbed. He boxed. I wouldn't even say performance of a lifetime. I just thought he boxed to a winnable performance. He was the better fighter, he was the better boxer, and he was the winner on the night, and ultimately he was robbed. George Cambosos had no answer to his counter-punching. Maxi Hughes buzzed him countless times. It was pretty comfortable, to be honest. The scores were absolutely disgusting. It's one of the worst cards I've ever seen. 117, 111. That judge should be struck off. It's a disgrace. It's not good enough, and boxing needs to change.
Boxy Ozzy Smith going in hard. Do you agree, Julian?
Well, I agree with Ozzy, but ultimately we have the same conversation week in, week out.
It's a month in it. It's 2 bad ones a month in it.
It's every single, even when you get the right winner, you always get that one card that you're like, I had no idea where that card came from.
You mean doing already in promoter's pocket kind of thing?
Yeah, and it's the only, I like to be objective. You know, I like to be objective. And Max actually asked me yesterday, because how do you think the fight's going to go? And I said, I'm not massive on Cambosos. I think he had one really good performance against a really out of sorts Tio Lopez, which was still a brilliant performance. But every other time I've seen Cambosos, I've not been impressed. He doesn't have a great work rate. He's not a puncher. You know, he's only got that 50% KO ratio. And I think he does more posturing and posing than he does actually scoring punches. I'm not mad on Cambosos. And I said, if Maxi gets into a rhythm and if it's just not a little bit too late in his career, there's no reason he can't spring an upset. It wouldn't have surprised me at all. So there was that part of it, whereas the performances from both fighters didn't surprise me whatsoever. But there was an also, and this is going to come across as a criticism. I've known Sean for a long time, and I've known Maxi used to come to Central Boxing Club, and I know those guys, that. But there was an element of, even though it was, I forget the kind of IBO belt, it was the adopted home favourite was Cambosos. But there was an element after 8-9 rounds. I wanted more urgency in the corner of Maxi. I wanted people to say, listen, they're not going to give you anything. You can't complain too hard about a decision when you know what's going to happen. And sometimes you just have to just put a bit more into those last 2 or 3 rounds to leave any doubt. It's wrong. It's corrupt. It's completely bent. I don't like to say that you need to do a little bit more to secure the victory, but the reality is you do. And there are a lot of judges who don't like single, sharp scoring punches. they look for the guy who's walking forward. I'm trying to make a case for whatever reason they were giving Cambosos rounds, but they look for the guy who's walking forward, the guy who's who's posturing, the guy who's pushing the other guy back, and it has to be really obvious to them what's going on. Yeah. I saw Maxi just outlanding him and landing better punches and crisper punches, but I wanted to see more in the last 3 rounds to absolutely put an exclamation mark on that fight. And I was frustrated because we've coaches, you've been in fights, you've been in championship fights, and Sean's been around the block now a million times, and those guys have been around the block a million times, and it can't come as any surprise what happened last night. It just can't. And I like Lou DiBella, but there was a moment where Lou DiBella, it was about a minute after the fight, a minute and a half after the fight.
He knows result, didn't he?
Cambosos looked at him and he winked and he put his thumb up. And I'm like, that's not good. That's not a good sign. And Sean was saying, you could hear Sean on the audio in the background saying, they're taking the time with the decision. They're taking the time with this decision. And Sean knows, look, Sean's been in the game a long time. Max has been in the game a long time, 5 defeats.
Seemed forever, didn't it, to make the decision, didn't it?
And this is the point. They know you don't get favours in boxing. You do not get favours.
Why did they have a rematch clause, Julian?
I guess it's what we're going to do, though. We're going to have a rematch clause.
No rematch clause, right, for starter to protect the kid, right? I know we don't like rematches, don't we? But it's a world title. They're away from home. It's not like they're at home in a domestic. No rematch clause. And also, why have we got 3 American judges and a Brit over there on an American promoter's show?
You might as well have 3 Australian judges, honestly. It's that bad.
Well, they've got the money in Cambosos now, so that is as good as an American, isn't he? He's fighting for an American promoter on American TV in America.
Well, to the best of my knowledge, Maxi Hughes didn't have a contract with Top Rank. He doesn't have a promotional deal with those guys. Yeah. Cambosos, he has the deal with those promoters. He has the deal with that setup. And this is the thing. What's the more exciting fight? Lopez Cambosos 2, assuming Lopez comes back, and put Lomachenko and Cambosos in the mix. He's kind of like he's a name who people know, or Devin Haney or someone like Devin Haney against Maxi Hughes. I mean, is Showtime or PCB gonna have Haney? Top Rank Haney and Maxi Hughes. No one's interested in that fight. So they're looking at what's the most.
Why not? He's just beat Cambosos and been robbed.
Because they're not interested, because he's not exciting, he's not a household name, and this is how boxing's bent. It's corrupt. It's very, very rarely about being the best fighter, is it? Because Maxi Hughes is a better fighter than George Cambosos. So I don't think there's any doubt about that last night. He proved he was a better fighter. Is he a more marketable fighter? Probably not. And it's one of those, he's one of the unsung heroes in boxing. He's gone down the hard road. He's never avoided anybody. He's been in people's backyards. I think they mentioned a statistic last night. He'd been the underdog in 4 of his last 6 or 7 fights, which shows you everything that you need to know about how the boxing establishment and how the promoters view Maxi Hughes. I mean, Matchroom didn't really put up any struggle, did they, to just let him go, to let him do his own thing. They didn't care about him. And it's part of the Who Needs Him club. It's always been the case of a really crafty southpaw. Who cares about them, really? Unless he sells massive tickets, who really cares about a counter-punching southpaw from South Yorkshire who doesn't run his mouth off, he's not controversial, he doesn't go around saying bruv, bruv, bruv. Who cares about Maxi Hughes apart from Maxi Hughes?
We care, the fans, because he's been shafted, hasn't he?
Well, we do that, but that's what I'm saying about the general public doesn't care. Who cares about all these fallen soldiers in boxing now? Nobody cares about them, mate. And this is the harsh reality of boxing, and we saw it laid bare last night. By the way, I'm not justifying the decision. It was a crap decision. I'm just saying this can't come as a surprise to you, Russell. That decision cannot have shocked you.
No, it didn't come as a surprise to me. Do you know what you were saying about round 8? Well, I was thinking a couple of rounds earlier, because I was looking at his statistics. He's 14% KO ratio, isn't he? Josh Warrington's 23%. So when you get to them points decisions and you're away from home, you know the risk when you're going out there. You're a non-puncher fighting away from home. We American judges, it's all stacked against you, innit? So you've got to knock them out to get a draw.
I hope the kid got well paid. I hope he got a good payday last night.
Well,
his phone's not going to ring. You know, Maxi said last night, he's such a humble lad. He said, you know, at least the global public, the US public, people have seen now and they've seen what Maxi Hughes is about. That's all well and good, but is that phone going to ring tomorrow? Is he going to be thrown into the mix with the lightweights? Or will it now be like...
it's working. He's not a...
Of course he is.
Commercial like figure, is he? Like Ben and Dylan White and all that carry on, is he?
If you're one of the top 6 or 7 lightweights in the world, right? What have you got to gain beating Maxi Hughes? Other than getting the IBO belt, which is now gone, that's gone. So you assume the ranking, he'll still be probably like the lower echelons of the top 10. So there's nothing to gain for him. You're not in the final eliminator against Maxi Hughes now. He's not number 1 or number 2 ranked by any of the organizations. So what have you got to gain by fighting Maxi Hughes, apart from the fact he's going to make you look bad, he's going to make you miss, he's going to make you pay, he's as fit as hell, he can do 12 rounds at an absolute canter.
He's 15 round fighter, isn't he?
He's got a good chin on. When I watched him, because obviously I've seen
his game after the 6th round, didn't he? His punch out fit.
See, I've seen Maxi spar obviously a number of times. He used to spar Sykes, Warrington, Tony Hitson at Central. We used to go over to Rotherham. He'd be there. He helped Gary prepare for one of the prize fighters. Jamie Kennedy give us Maxi and a couple of other good kids. And even then, Maxi he had like a really old-fashioned style. It reminds me of the old nip and tuck British, the good British fighters of the 70s and 80s. You think of an Alan Minter. Really capable. I mean, obviously Minter was an elite amateur, I understand that, but you think of how capable Alan Minter was. He was such a really good traditional fighter. You think of the Howard Winstons and guys like that. Maxi's he's probably born 30 years after his time is Maxi. He would have been somebody who the British public would have really appreciated 30 years ago just because of his style. He's crafty. And if you watch his feet, I like watching fighters' feet. And Sean said something quite interesting, actually, after the 6th. It was a good point from Sean. He said, you stopped using your feet. It just started to become a little bit stationary because he couldn't miss Cambosos. And he stunned him in the 5th. He started getting a little bit into a fight with Cambosos. And Sean said, don't forget your feet. And he's got that art as Maxi. And he just moves his feet by 2 inches. Half a step by 2 inches. And that's an old pro style. That's something that, you don't see anymore. You don't see crafty pros.
Jump back, don't they now, don't they?
Yeah, exactly. He's got high hands. He's got that southpaw high guard. His elbows are tucked in. If you had a son who was left-handed and you wanted someone to coach him, you would look at Maxi, wouldn't you? You'd say, will you do some work with my son? And he's just crafty. And unfortunately, what I'm saying might sound like I'm contradicting myself. And what I'm saying is, I absolutely see the value in what Maxi does. But is he fashionable? Is a crafty?
Should it be about that? Fashionable?
Well,
should it?
Well, who are the highest paid fighters in the world, Russell? Tommy Fury is earning more than 99% of the professional fighters who's around right now.
Yeah. Well,
I'm not on social media, but I dare say if I look at Maxi Hughes' Instagram account, it doesn't have a lot of followers or follow anybody. I think it's probably a small circle of friends. He's not about that life. And I bet he lands back next week or whenever he lands back on UK soil, he'll be home, he'll be stripping some wallpaper, he'll be weeding the garden, he'll be fixing some shelves. He'll be just doing what kind of regular guys do. And as I've said, he's born after his time because the sport's moved on. Listen, how many times do I get told I'm stuck in the 80s? I talk about boxing and I love watching boxing, but I can't stand this modern era, what it's about. I can't stand it. And whilst I appreciate Maxi Hughes and you appreciate Maxi Hughes and you're frustrated, you're saying, Is it right? Is it right?
No,
No,
it's
it's not.
right.
It's not right, but it is what it is. This is the sport of boxing now, and there'll be a bad decision next week. There'll be one the week after, and there'll be. This won't stop. Nothing's going to change. There'll be nothing changes about that. All you can hope with Maxi is he got well paid, and there's another payday down the road for him.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not good, is it, for Maxi? And where does he go now? Because they've not worked with the big two from UK on this one, have they?
You just hope, don't you, that there's something in it in terms of the US. There might be another lightweight coming through the rankings who they want to test, but they'll take a calculated risk and they might think, you know what, Maxi's got another fight on his record, another 12-rounder. Maybe he's there for the taking. He might get offered something again on a top ranked show, but he might not. The phone might never ring, or it might ring in 12, 18 months' time when he's been. It's a difficult one, mate. It's the cruelty of the sport. I trained someone who was a strong, not a big punching super featherweight, and he wasn't very fashionable, and people would give up belts rather than defend against him. And it's just the sport, Russell. It's not just about what you can do inside the ring, is it? And unfortunately, I'm saying the same thing. He got robbed. It was a crap decision. I thought, a couple of rounds maybe could have worked a lot harder just to secure it, but they'd have probably robbed him anyway, ultimately. And at least he was true to himself. And what can you do? There's nothing you can do about it, mate. Nothing you can do about it.
Do you think they're trying to push him into Gatekeeper class, and he's a bit higher than that?
He's definitely higher than Gatekeeper class, isn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, he must be, as I've said, the whole team must be disappointed but not shocked. So if you think of Josh Warrington, I saw Josh I know Josh, as you know, but I saw Josh in the corner and Reese Mould after the fight. They looked as sick as dogs. They looked sick dogs. Now, I know Josh Warrington, for example. I remember when he was a 15, 16-year-old amateur. He got shafted in the amateurs so many times because he wasn't a fashionable fighter. So this is not new to these guys. It's like the faces said it all. But they kind of all almost say, well, it is what it is. It's one big popularity contest, isn't it? And this is where we're at.
Is that why his dad stormed off at end, do you think?
Yeah, what they know the score, don't they? They're just like, I've done that myself. I've done what Sean's done. I've got out of the ring. This is rubbish. As an amateur coach, I had to go at people. And you get, like in the amateurs, I saw a couple of kids really shafted badly. And you complain and you kick off, and they give you a form to fill out. If you're not happy with the decision, fill this form out. It's like,
they don't mean shit, them forms. I've seen them.
They don't mean
fills
nothing.
them in straight after. Do you know what they do with them? Wipe their asses on them.
Exactly. So it's that's what I'm saying. So Josh and Reese, sick as dogs. Sean got out the ring, sick as a dog. Maxi looked absolutely gutted. But if you sit down with any of those four people, and this is what I'm saying, and I'm frustrated for them, there's no surprises there. There's
the dance going out there if they didn't get a stoppage, didn't they?
I mean, this is the thing. I mean, I'm wondering if the 117-111 scorecard is the worst scorecard since Jose Luis Ramirez and Pernell Whitaker in Paris when
it was a draw.
They robbed Whitaker. It was the worst decision I can ever remember. And I think one had it quite wide for Ramirez. And I'm wondering if that 117-111, that's not bad judging. That is corruption. That is absolute rotten corruption.
How can it be 10 rounds out in a 12-round fight? It's unbelievable. It means that every round nearly he's give to the other guy, hasn't it? But he's give like him all of them nearly, hasn't he?
I think somebody said, I've just caught little bits of it. I've been out and about today, but I think someone said the first round the judges gave to Cambosos. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, I watched it this morning. I didn't know the result when I watched it about 10 o'clock, 10:30. And the first round, I think Maxi landed about 3 or 4, like really sweet left uppercuts. He brought him onto him. And Cambosos, I don't even think landed anything. And I'm like, no, surely that first round went to Maxi, but apparently not.
Signs were there from round one, weren't they?
I don't know what. Listen, you'll never change it. We talk about it. How many things were promised after the Catterall and Josh Taylor fight?
We're
How
back
many
again,
things were
aren't we?
promised? Yeah, well, and we've just had it again. I mean, listen, those scorecards that scored for Josh Taylor, they're not as bad as that card last night, 117, 111.
That one last night won't get as much hype though, will it?
No, it won't get any hype. Do you know why? Because he's a working class lad from South Yorkshire who's been shafted abroad, out of sight, out of mind. There'll be a little bit of a kerfuffle for 2 or 3 days. It'll go quiet, and the world will keep spinning, mate. And that kid now I mean, how old is Maxi?
33.
So he's 33. So he's in the kind of autumn stroke winter of his career as a lightweight, and he's not going to get any better. He might get a little bit smarter, but he's not going to get any better. I thought he boxed really well. I thought that he boxed like he boxes. He's a clever kid. He's just did exactly what he's done the last 6, 7 times we've seen him, John Joe Carroll and those guys. And Cambosos, I thought, was found wanting. But what I don't like, though, and look, no one's ever going to say I didn't think I won the fight. But I really hate when people like Cambosos afterwards just says, he says, "Oh, I won easy. I won most of the rounds." And I just think, come on, mate, come on, mate. What? Stop talking nonsense, because you just look like an idiot. But it is what it is, isn't it, mate? I keep saying it is what it is. It's raw and it's bent, it's corrupt. Listen, if boxing was on the level and honest, you wouldn't have a channel, Russell.
No.
Because your channel's all about these injustices and calling out this crap. You wouldn't have nothing to talk about, because if you're on the level, your channel would be boring, mate.
Yeah. All right. Well, we wish Maxi all the best.
We do.
And let's hope Blue Lou gives him a rematch.
But ultimately, the final thing I'll say about Maxi is whatever happened last night, whatever goes on, and whatever money he doesn't make, it doesn't make it any better. But he's one of those fighters who's respected by boxing people, and he can carry his head high. He can walk through his hometown. Yeah. And I think he'll be one of those guys in 20, 30 years' time when people talk about him and say, proper solid pro him. He was a really, really good, solid, world-class fighter. Yeah. And I guess sometimes you have to settle for that, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah, you do. To the other side of the spectrum now, Tommy Fury's come out and he said that he don't need any new mates in his life, but if he has to let anybody into his circle, they need to have a big following around them, because there's a lot of frauds in the sport of boxing. His dad and his brother Tyson tell him. Hey.
Well, I haven't seen it, I haven't heard it, so there's a kind of an irony in that statement. So I have enough friends in my life, very, very few friends. You're one of them. Yeah. And I keep it small. But ultimately, if I do have any more friends added onto my life, then I hope they've got no following. Nobody knows who they are, because there's an irony about they need to have a huge following.
He's a young lad, isn't he? 23-year-old, isn't he?
He's a young lad, but there's nothing more superficial than having 5,000 Facebook friends and 50,000 followers on Instagram, because it just, they're not your friends. They're not what they are. And look, he's a young lad. He's a material lad. I think he's quite a shy lad, actually, is Tommy Fury. I like him from what I see. But he understands what works. I don't know what to say, really, mate. I actually don't know what to say, because you've just said it, haven't you? From one end of the spectrum to the other. We've gone from talking about Maxi Hughes, world-class fighter, paid his dues, been in with everybody at domestic level. Now he's fighting like world-class fighters and schooling them. And now you've just jumped over to a guy who's, maybe a nice
millions.
Millionaire, multi-millionaire, probably about 10% as good as Maxi Hughes in terms of a boxing equivalent. And if he's lucky, I don't know what to say, mate. Good luck to him, mate. That's all I can say with Tommy Fury. Make as much money as you can. Boxing's a hard sport. fight KSI 3 times, fight Logan Paul, fight Jake Paul, fight those big 400-pound guys who we saw rolling around like harpooned whales on that Misfits show. Stay over there, fight those guys, make as much money as you can, and stay away from domestic level light heavyweights or cruiserweights, because that's not for you, mate.
Yeah, yeah. Who would you say is the heir to the Bean throne? Is it Johnny Nelson or Matthew Macklin? Who do you think is going to get it?
I'm going to be controversial. I'm going to say right now, nobody. Because until Sky Sports, I'm not talking about the top ranked shows, I'm on about the UK shows. Until Sky Sports starts to show some decent fights now, because the bills are horrendous. So never mind who's the front of office PR guy. I want to see some quality shows on Sky Sports, or else it'll just drift away. Honestly, I think it's awful what they're putting on. And I was somebody who was excited about Sky coming back to boxing when Eddie left, and I think the rubbish that they're putting on is dreadful, mate. But if you have to give me, I don't know. I mean,
Sky are struggling, aren't they, Julian? Sky are struggling.
I can't believe the shows that they're building up, and now you've got Joshua Boatse, who was someone who was actually being talked about as being the heir apparent, and I never thought it was like that elite world level. And now they're getting excited about him dropping down to fight, what's it called?
Dan Aziz.
Dan Aziz, who's, I'll debate with anybody, he's a proper domestic level operator, is Dan Aziz.
He's a European champion though, isn't he, Dan?
No, he beat a super middleweight who was pretty average for a vacant belt. It doesn't make the champion of Europe in my eyes. It just means you picked up a belt what was there, and it would make sense to advertise as a Sky show. This is for the European belt. You know how boxing works, mate. That guy who Dan Aziz beat was poor, mate. It was a non-punching super middleweight who had been found out several times. That's not a European belt like Pat Barrett going to Europe and knocking out Ephraim Calamity and knocking out world-class European fighters. I'm talking good world-class European fighters. That's not a European belt, mate. That's an engineered belt. I'm not knocking Dan Aziz. He's not the champion of Europe. He's not.
Well, Boxrec says he is, but I see where you're coming from, Julian. Well, Boatse needs to get a move on then, doesn't he, really?
He needs to start fighting, doesn't he? And I don't know the terms and conditions of the fight he turned down with Bivol, but I still find it quite alien when fighters turn down world title shots. I think it's a bizarre thing, but we've spoke before, haven't we? We've said there's something about Boatse that, you know, is it 6 years, 7 years now since the Olympics?
Yeah.
And this is where he's at. And I know not everybody's Evander Holyfield, but we talked about Holyfield, didn't we? That in 1984 he got the bronze, just like Boatse. Yeah, robbed. So he got a bronze medal, did Holyfield, and 2 years later he was world champion. 3 years later he was undisputed champion. 7 years, Joshua Boatse, 7 years on from being a medalist in the Olympics, when you should get that momentum and that ascendancy, he's effectively fighting at a domestic level opposition. It's not great, mate. It's really poor.
Yeah, it is. The Gad's had a bit of stick this week from me and various other people on internet, social media. He had his opportunity to cross-examine Bricktop. Do we all agree on that?
Yeah.
Right. Well, Bricktop started when they were going on about Calzaghe, Froch, this and that, blah, blah, blah. Why didn't the Gad ask him why him and Calzaghe ended up in court over the Calzaghe-Hopkins one? And they all ended up battling in court, didn't they? High court over the purse money off it. Nobody mentions that, do they? Things like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you think it's at the moment on TalkSport? It's one rule for one. Look, we know where we are. Our opinion on Eddie Hills, but Eddie gets a rough ride on there, doesn't he? Outside of Bricktop.
Oh, Frank gets a real smooth run, and I don't care what the narrative is from TalkSport. We're neutral. We give Frank a hard time. We give Eddie a hard time. We give Robert Smith a hard time. They clearly don't. You know, the Gad clearly is in Frank Warren's camp, in spite of what he says and he thinks he's clearly in Frank Warren's camp. I mean, the U-turn that Spencer Oliver and the Gad did on the Ngannou Fury fight, you know, from initially when it was talked about, to say, oh, it's not great, this shouldn't be happening, we want to see this, we want to see that, to then the Gad dripping a week or two ago saying, it's the big fight, it's the big fight. I thought it was awful. And
Adam Catterall wasn't having it, were he?
Adam Catterall was brilliant. So when they had the top ranked president on, I forget his name, was it Dan LeBeouf? Whatever. That's right. When they had him on, you know, I study body
Aaron
language.
Stepson, that, you know.
Oh, is it? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's married to his mum.
Oh, well, there you go. But what I noticed was I was watching the Gad, and as LeBeouf was kind of like talking about how good a fight it was, and no one else was available, the body language on the Gad, it was dreadful. He was like, and he was agreeing with everything he said. He was like, and I just looked at him and I thought, you've no backbone, mate. It's one thing being cut off access, being alienated. I understand that. You're not going to be ultra controversial. You'll be cut off. You know if you was on mainstream Russell, you know what had happened. They'd cut access off quicker because
straight away, man.
You'd last about 3 seconds and that'd be it, because you'd be honest and you'd ask the questions what people want to hear. But still, you can still be challenging a way like Adam Catterall was challenging by just saying, no, I'm not buying that. I don't agree with that. But the Gad is just, it changes like the wind. He's a chameleon, isn't he? And depending on whose company he's in, it just changes. And I just think he's spineless. And do you know what? It's like the Conor Benn thing, isn't it? When, you know my views on Conor Benn. Everybody on your channel knows my views on Conor Benn. But I've said this before. I think Conor Benn was right to shove the microphone in his face and say, go away from me, when he tried to talk to him. And he says, oh, the arrogance of youth, did the Gad. I think Conor Benn was right to do that, because he's like, hang on a minute. You've been ripping me to bits. And then when the winds change and it looks like there might be an opportunity for me to clear my name, there might be some science that proves I'm innocent or whatever, the Gad starts to change. And I really love Conor Benn. I think he's he's a fine young man. And I care about Conor Benn. And he's just he's weak, he's a chameleon, and he's fake, and I don't like it. And I'm also a little bit disappointed in Simon Jordan as well, because I think Simon Jordan showed some strength, but in the past few months, he seems to be
he's softened up on his Simon Jordan from his initial, when he first started. He wanted to get them all on edge, and he's been softened up on it.
Yeah, I think so, and I just think it's not good, and it's, as I've said, it's difficult trying to find a fine line, but you have to have an element of objectivity. And Adam Catterall's like, no, this fight's not good enough, and Ngannou Fury is not good enough. Are you telling us there are no heavyweights out there who's available to fight Tyson Fury?
Any heavyweight in rankings will do. They can park the belt up. It'll be a non-title fight, couldn't it, if you want to keep busy?
It's rubbish, isn't it? It's like, you're telling me there aren't heavyweights out there in the gym who are ranked in the top 15 or top 12 who would have... Look, there are fighters out there who they know they're not going to get a shot for 2-3 years the way the current structure is. They're sat out there, they're parked up. They'd have taken... There's fighters out there who would have taken that fight. And it's nonsense. And then to start saying things like, well, nobody knows who Frank Sanchez is. If you walk down the road, who's Frank Sanchez? It's not about that, is it? You don't have to know who everybody is in boxing, because Fury said, look, Fury fought Derek Chisora and he still sold a massive amount of tickets, right? So people would pay money to see, Tyson Fury opening an envelope. They really would. So who cares if it's Tyson Fury against the world number 11 or 12? Who cares? But what we do want to see is Tyson Fury with legitimate fighters. That's what we want to see.
Yeah, that's all we want, isn't it?
This guy, this and Ngannou, it's not only has he got zero chance, he's actually, and he hasn't got a puncher's chance of nonsense. Not only has he got zero chance, he's not exactly a spring chicken, is he? He's like 36 and he's been parked up himself, hasn't he?
37 he is, I think.
37. So you got a guy who's heading slowly towards his 40s, not a boxer, never had a competitive boxing match, and he's fighting the #1 heavyweight in the world when there's all these guys sat saying, "What about me?" And this is, goes right back to what we said about Maxi Hughes. This is, unfortunately, this is the landscape of boxing. Social media's had a big part to play in this. It's always been, there's been an element of popularity throughout boxing history. I'm not saying Fury is the only fighter to have avoided certain challenges. Jack Dempsey did that, going back over 100 years. It does happen, but not as unashamedly as it's happening now.
Yeah, it's not good, mate, is it? It's not good at the moment.
It's not good. So it's frustrating, mate. And people say, "Oh, they're on again. They're on again. They're knocking boxing." We just want to see. You know what we've said every week, don't we?
Everything we've been banging on about, it's just happened again.
It's happening again. It's happening
No,
again.
it'll happen, but you keep buying it.
Yeah, but eventually it will falter. People will. I mean, you only have to look at. I know there's only a small audience at the moment, but if you look at like the bare knuckle, the BKFC, and all this kind of stuff,
they all turn up and fight.
They turn up. They have a fight. You've got the global bare knuckle. They got domestic bare knuckle. You got mixed martial arts. You got 4 or 5 organisations.
Which one's that? Danny Christian. Which one's that? Is it which?
BKFC.
He turns up, doesn't he? Him.
Danny Christie will have a fight. Well, he's not bothered, is he? He's like, let's do it.
He don't get all that I want to walk out second shit, does he?
And I wonder what Danny Christie's earning for those fights. It won't be great, mate. He might get, I don't know, I'm not close to it. He might get 8 grand, he might get 10 grand. He won't get a lot of money, mate.
I know, it's not good. You want to go on to part 2, lad?
Let's do it, Russell.
Bang!